Okay, want to look at section 1.2, part 2. And we want to look at investment video. Section 1.2, part 2, investment problems. All right, so we've done 2 perimeter problems, and I think you have 3 or 4 perimeter problems in your homework set. Now I want to do an investment problem, but I'm going to have to do 2 or 3 what I call warm-up problems before I really get to the actual problems that I want to work with you. In just a few minutes, we're going to work 2 problems to close out this section. When we get to those, I'll say, okay, these 2 we're about to work, they're like your homework. But I need to do a couple before we get to that so that I can kind of guide you to where I want to guide you to. All right, so before I do anything, let me first of all put up this that you may or may not have forgotten. And it's just simply this, from geometry. In geometry, there is what we call a simple interest formula. Call them interest problems in geometry. And it involves a formula, and here is the formula. Interest is equal to principal times rate times time. Interest equal to principal times rate times time. Now, you probably just remember it this way. I is equal to PRT. Now, let me quickly talk about these words right quick before we move on. First of all, the time is always given in years. Or time has to be in terms of years. So, if it's 5 years, time would be 5. If it's 12 years, T would be 12. If it was 6 months, T would be a half, or 0.5, because 6 months is half of a year. So time has to always be in terms of years. Now, having said all of that, the good thing for you will be, and for us, and in the homework, time is always going to be 1 year. So that's going to really make it easy. So T and all of our problems will be 1 year. Now, the rate is always easy to recognize because the rate or interest rate is always given by a percentage. And you will always be given the percentage in the problem. So you will see that behind every rate. 4%, 8%, 9%, 15%, etc. Now let me remind you something about a percent in case you've forgotten. Because we will rewrite all of these percentages as decimals. And by the way, that's why we covered equations with decimals in section 1.1. So if I rewrite 7% as a decimal, remember that's 7 over 100, which is 0.07. Here's the way most remember it. Just move your decimal from where it's at 2 places back. So if you move this, that decimal's understood here. When you move it 2 places back, it's 0.07. So 2%, move it 2 places back, would be 0.02. Now, if you have 0.036%, when you drop the percent, you have to move it 2 places back, so you have to add 2 zeros in front of the 0.36. So it's 0.00036. Or if you have 18%, the decimal's here. So that would be 0.18. So that's just a quick reminder about that. All right. Let me talk about 2 other words here. So time's always going to be 1 year. Rate is always your percentage. Principal is the amount of money you start out with. Like if I took some money and I went down to the bank and I put it into a savings account, it's going to accumulate a little bit of interest. Not much, but it will accumulate a little bit of interest. So if I have $1,000 and I go put it in a savings account, the $1,000 is the amount of money that you start out with. The interest is the money you end up with over what you started out with. Like if I put $1,000 in a savings account, and at the end of a year I go get it and it's $1,050. The interest is the $50. So principal is how much you start out with. Interest is how much you made above what you started out with. So interest is money. Interest rate is a percentage. Interest is money above what you started with. Principal is the amount of money you start with. Rate is always a percentage. And time is 1 year. So let's work one problem. This is a warm-up problem. You don't have homework like this, but I still want you to see this. So let's do 2 warm-up problems before we get to the 2 problems that I really want to work with you. So write this problem right here down. Here's the problem. David invested $1,420 at a 6% interest rate for 1 year. How much total interest did he earn? Now, this is a super simple problem. So we've got interest equal to principal times rate times time. We're looking for the total interest. We know how much David started with. We know the interest rate. And we know the time is 1 year, which I told you that would be always the case. So if I plug this straight into the formula, it would be $1,420 times 0.06 times 1. And when you multiply that out, that's $85.20. Now, I know that you get this, but let me say it anyway. So this means that if David put money in the bank at this interest rate for 1 year, when he goes and gets his money at the end of 1 year, his $1,420 is still there, plus this much over. So this is how much above that he has after 1 year. That is his interest, $85.20. Okay, now let's do one more warm-up problem before we get to the 2 problems. Write this problem down. David has a total of $500 that he wishes to invest. He invested $200 at a 3% rate, and the rest of the money at a 5% rate. Now the question, how much total interest will he earn after 1 year? Okay. So let's start with our formula. Interest equal to principal times rate times time. Now, this formula is not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is this. Is David making one investment or 2 investments? He's making 2 investments. He's making some at a 3% and some at a 5%. So he's getting interest off of 2 different places. So now, because he's getting interest off of both of them, it's not going to be interest equal to principal times rate times time. It's going to be interest equal to principal times rate times time plus principal times rate times time. And again, where does that come from? It comes from him making two different investments. So we've got interest equals to principal times rate times time plus principal times rate times time. All right. We're looking for the total interest. So I've got these 6 spots to fill. Make sure you can see all of those. Yeah. All right, so I've got these 6 spots to fill. We're looking for total interest. So you're not going to put anything in for that. That's what we're looking for. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Let's put in what we know. Well, we know the times, don't we? 1 year. So let's put those in. So the time is 1 year. The time is 1 year. Do we know the two interest rates? Yes, we do. First interest rate is 3%, which is 0.03. The other one is 5%, which is 0.05. Now, the only thing we have left to fill is how much he put here and how much he put here. I know this is obvious. You'll see why I'm going over this with you in just a few minutes. Question. Did it say David put 500 over here and 500 here? No. It said he started out with $500. So let me draw a little picture down here. So David had $500, and he's going to break it apart into two amounts. So he started with 500. He didn't invest 500 at 3%. Now, how much did it say he invested at the 3%? Look back at the problem. How much? $200. Now, did it tell me how much he invested at the 5%? Yes and no. It didn't come right out and tell me, but what did it say? It said he put $200 here, and the rest of it he put over here. Well, if he put 500, if he had 500, and he put 200 over here, how do you find out what's left? Well, that's easy. You take your total minus what he put over there, which is 300. Now, that's easy to do right now. In just a minute, that's going to give you a little bit of trouble. So, if I have $10 and I put 3 in one pocket, how do you find out what's left? 10 minus 3. If I have $10 and I put 9 in one pocket, what's left? 10 minus 9. Listen to this now. If I have $10 and I put X in one pocket, what's left? 10 minus X. So 10 minus 3, 10 minus 1, 10 minus X. So works the same way. We'll come back to that in just a minute. Okay, now take your calculator to finish working this problem. If you take 200 times 0.03 times 1, you get 6. Plus, if you take 300 times 0.05 times 1, you get 15. And then if you add those together, $21. So David made $21 from those two investments. Okay, I'm going to stop the video here because in the next video will be the 2 investment problems. So you don't have investment problems like these two, but you'll see why I did these 2 warm-up examples before we get to the next problem. So in the next video will be section 1.2, part 3, and there'll be 2 problems just like what's in your homework.